Hello and welcome to the Xtra Edge, a sports analytics podcast powered by KINEXON Sports. I'm Dave Grinjinski, and today we're talking with Lyle Henley. Now, Lyle is the Director of Sports Performance at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, UAB. He oversees all aspects that pertain to athletic performance on and off the field for the UAB football program. And Coach, thank you so much for taking a little time and joining us here on the Xtra Edge podcast.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Now, Coach Henley has been with the Blazers since the program was reinstated back in 2016. He has helped the Blazers to an overall record of 54-34, which includes 2 Conference USA championships, 3 Conference USA division titles, and 3 bowl victories. And how about this, folks? Last season, the Blazers set the single season school record for yards per game at 450 yards. And Coach, congratulations on all your accomplishments, and we'll get to it, but hopefully the data had something to do with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely it did. You know, every little thing matters moving forward, and definitely the data collection has been a huge component in our success for sure.
That's great. Now, you mentioned on this podcast, we love to talk about, how coaches collect sports data and analytics, and then how they use it to get insights and then take actions. We like to call it data, insights, action. I call it DIA. So let's start with the data. And first of all, let's talk about you. I know you're using it, I know you're big on injury prevention and player availability, which we'll get to. But first, what about you? What was it about sports data and analytics that piqued your interest, and then why did you start using it?
Well, out of a background in a private sector, when I was in a private sector, you tried to create things, actionable items to keep client retention, right? So early on, we started having a lot of younger athlete clients. It got as simple as data collection as attendance, body weight, things that were very simple, to keep the client to come back, is what the client would say, I don't know if it's worth it. Let's go back and look at your attendance, number one. Let's look at your 2. Let's see how it's affecting your body weight. It had clients at such a young age that really outputs didn't matter right at this point. So you're looking at the very, very basic of the basic to see what you have to look back on to make sure that you have, get something back to where you're getting your money's worth, right? So how do I keep coming back? So as it started progressing, the athletes began getting older, and I moved more back into the collegiate setting as technology started progressing. This has been over a course of 25 years now since I've been involved in this. The ways of being able to look at these different types of data and see how, number one, are we holding each other accountable, the athlete and the coach? And as it started progressing, we started seeing things that, that were more relatable to the actionable items which we were trying to get across to the athlete.
Well, and obviously, you saw the value in it. And your situation to me is so unique because you essentially have brought a football program back from the dead. And not only that, you're coaching them up, Coach. You're getting guys to the pros, including my Cleveland Browns, Alex Wright. I mean, we love them here in Cleveland. Austin Watkins, who we had, and that hurt when we lost him to the Eagles. He had such a great camp for us last year, and Starling Thomas. I mean, you're coaching these guys up, and I'm just curious, like how much has the data played a role from, restarting the program back in 2017, and then also, getting these guys to perform and getting them to the next level?
Right. It's a huge part. So you look at these guys, let's take Alex Wright, for example. All right. Alex Wright, we have been a developmental program here at UAB. So that's the kind of athletes we've gotten for years. So all 12 active guys we have in the NFL have been 5 to 6 year guys for us. we could go on and on, but let's just take Alex Wright, for example. It was a 209-pound kid when he came in, and left here at 272 pounds. So as you start moving these guys through this process of having them for 5 to 6 years, you start to look at things where, what do you keep chasing? What metrics do you keep chasing? Do you keep chasing metrics that have a point of diminishing return? And then when you get to that set point, what other metrics do you start to chase? The only way to really know that for sure is to look into the data, right? So when we start looking into the data, how strong is strong enough that we start chasing another? We're on the strength speed curve, or the speed strength curve, looking at velocity. Where are we fast enough? Where are we powerful enough? And not so much, I don't know if you can ever be strong or fast enough. You can't never be too much of any of those things. At what point are you farther away from something? Am I too much faster than I am strong? Or too much stronger than I am fast? So looking at the data, we kind of have, ranges that we look at. And it's the same thing out on the field. Like, we're looking at when we start taking these guys through different types of conditioning or practice or speed profiling. We look into the data, we use the GPS and see, are we training in those right zones? Are we training too much in this zone as opposed to not? Am I getting the things that I need to get? So it gives us a, unquestionable idea of where we need to be. And it's not so much the coach's eye, which is very important. And like I said, not being so much data driven, but data informed when we make these informed choices moving forward with these athletes.
And so when you restarted the program and you knew you wanted to do data and have data involved, did you have in mind exactly what you wanted to track or what metrics meant the most to you at the time? Or was it something that sort of developed as the seasons went on?
It developed as when you start getting into practice planning with these coaches. I'm now with my third different head coach at UAB. You have to get a feel. So because you start coming up with an actionable plan of where you want the team to fall in, you have to look, number one, at the team's training age, right? So how familiar are they in these offenses or defenses? And so when you start looking at, hey, this team, I'm really not familiar with what a practice looked like year one with Bill Clark, right? So it took me year 2, year 3 to get comfortable with Bill Clark. Okay, this is what a Bill Clark practice. This is his non-negotiables of what he has to have. How can we navigate in and out of these practices and training leading up to get these guys ready for practice? What does it look like? Is the offense more of a run-based? Is it pass-based? Is it slow tempo? Is it up tempo? Brian Vincent was an offensive coordinator, but once he got to put his hand on where he was and his touch on the program, it evolved a little bit more. So practices started shifting with Brian Vincent. Now we come in with Trent Dilfer. Trent Dilfer is running a totally different style of offense. The defense is going to be paced around that. Our league is a different league. It's starting to evolve in some different things of where college football is going. So it looks a little bit different what we're preparing for. So as you start to figure out, there's a training age of your team. So when your team first starts to get involved, you have to onboard a lot of these. So the volume is going to be a little bit higher because we're teaching. I've already noticed year 2 in our different style of with Coach Dilfer, that is, there's not so much onboarding of materials. The player's a little bit more familiar. It doesn't take as many reps and as much volume as it does. So you adjust year to year. You really don't get a good feel of where you need to be specifically, I would say, until about that second or third, maybe even fourth year.
Okay, well, now that you're into your second year, I love to ask coaches. So, you have all these metrics to pick from, hundreds of them, that you want to track. And we like to call it around here the metrics trifecta. Do you have a top 3? Do you have a metrics trifecta that you look at?
What it's different of what we look at and different for what I show the coaches, right? So the coaches, they want to keep it very simple. The coaches report that I send out every day is they want to see miles per hour because that's what they're most familiar with. That's what everybody is looking, the NFL, even with college football, even high school football now is, how fast is a kid top end speed? That isn't a huge factor of what I look at, but it's cool to put out there and it's cool to have our guys compete every day and the coaches want to see that. Other than that, it's simply the volume and the load because we have a pretty much a set volume is my easiest way to communicate to the coaches of where we want to be. And it changes with every position group. And with the load, that is kind of, hey, what really matters is the X cells, D cells, the intensities, all those different things moved into one. Not only is a volume, but what kind of volume is it? That's where the load score comes in. And that's a number I can say, hey, his load score was like, we had him in a certain volume. Yeah. But the load score was a little high today, or not high enough, depending on what we're trying to dose the athlete with and what stimulus we're trying to provide. So the three I put out are miles per hour, volume, and load. But with us, I'm really looking at the load score and then getting inside the different types. I like to get inside the speed spline, and I like to look at different types of velocities. We look at exit velocity, closing velocity, separation velocity. Is this guy getting to within 60% of his max velocity? And how fast is he getting there? The gold standard is 1 to 1.5 seconds. How long is it taking? How much separation is the offensive guy getting? How much distance is the defensive player able to close in the shortest amount of time? And we're able to go through and look at those things, especially using our speed spline on the speed work. And that's what our staff gets into post practice and finding those things right there.
Well, the other thing that's unique about your program, not only the fact that you basically had to start from scratch, in 2017, but everything I read, I mean, this is like an old school mentality kind of coaching staff. And you mentioned Trent Dilfer, who comes in last year. Now, this is a guy who won a Super Bowl, right? This is a guy who won it with the Ravens, who was old school, just in your face, hard knock defense. So from your perspective, okay, I'm just curious. Did you have to sell Trent Dilfer on data and analytics, or is he like, listen, man, we can do this, or was Trent on board right away, or did he come to you and say, hey, we got to do it?
Well, I did. I expect kind of with his background and stuff to him being more data driven. He was actually, he got that great old school mentality. But I'll say one thing about Coach Dilfer: he is always looking to find the next little edge. So he came in with an open mind. First, full transparency, he said, I'm not a GPS guy. I'm not one of those guys. We went with NFL. And, what we did is, if you were going too hard, you back off. If we thought you weren't going hard enough, we'll push, but we'll find a way to push through it, and that's the type of guy, Trent. But he said, if you can sell it to me, then I'll buy it. Then I'm with it. And we have to be very good with what we do right now. And at a mid-major school, all of our finances and everything have to go to things that are really is the juice worth the squeeze. We have to have that, especially in this era of NIL, when we're starting to have to divert money in different areas. So it becomes so they came in, Coach Dilfer came in, almost did like an audit of the whole building to see what you had to have or you didn't. And you're talking about a guy that puts his money where his mouth is, where he took $500,000 of his salary and put it back into the coaching pool and back into the resources. So with that being said, luckily, I had two students who were 2 years prior graduated and were getting into their doctorate of physical therapy. They wanted to do a study, and they said, well, can I do an internship within the weight room, and can we do a study? What should we do a study on? I said, let's look at the GPS and let's look at what it's really done for us. Okay. So we did a 2-year study on the volume load is the juice worth the squeeze. We actually did the study in 2021 and 2022. And so if a coach comes in and says, if we're doing too much, we'll just back off. We won't go as long. We won't, we'll shorten the practice, or we will go in and we will knock the volume down. So we won't do as we'll throw short game instead of long game. That'll cut back on the yardage. So we looked at 3 things inside that study. And inside the study in 2021, the volume, which we looked at 3 things: volume, time, and X cells, D cells. The volume had a huge impact on injury prevention, right? And time didn't really matter. Year 2, the volume didn't really matter, but the time did. So we were inconsistent there. But in all 3 years, X cells and D cells greatly affected injury prevention, right? They had a huge effect on whether we determined where injuries were coming from: soft tissue and non-contact. So I said, if you want to be able to, the only way we can control X cells and D cells or the load is with the GPS and knowing these things. So that was a big selling point. We went through the whole study, and he was like, you know what? I'm sold. But here was the catch 22. Now you're going to help start helping me script practice. So, all right. So now we're going to go in and start scripting practice to have them at these different percentages. I know nothing about, and I'll say this. Yeah, I know nothing about the coaches that are coming in, what the off. He's like, get with both the coordinators, get with me. And so I'm like, wow, man, we got the GPS, but I've really put about another 2 to 3 hours on my day every day right here, right? But if you're really trying to make, an effect on what happens and help to determine the outcome, I think the kind of gold standard for a performance coach would be able to have some hand in helping script practice and what those look like. Now, to be able to do that, I had to put the GPS vest on our players while they're doing individual practices that where they start doing leading up to spring practice and fall ball. Because if I went to a coach and said, hey, we need to be at 63% this day, they're like, okay, what is 63%? I couldn't tell them that unless I had that data from those individual training sessions with the coaches, which are player-led practices, right? So if a coach comes to me and is like, here, my non-negotiable for the day is I've got to have inside drill and I've got to throw short game. I've got to determine here you can have those two things, but you can only add A, B, or C, or X, Y, and Z to have us be at 63% for the day. And I couldn't just come up with an arbitrary number. So even though we were at the GPS, we got it. And he sees the value in it, and everybody does. And it's, and I'll say this year, we were the fastest we've ever been, with the least amount of injuries we've ever had from a soft tissue standpoint. So we had great things to go back and the metrics to look at that helped us. The thing is that, man, it took a lot of work to get there. It really did.
So is that study published anywhere?
I don't know. It was done through UAB.
Okay, I'll look for it.
I can send it to you. Actually, I've got it.
Okay, great.
I showed it in the presentation, but it was the guys did an unbelievable job with it, and they both got A's and got in physical therapy school, so it was good, and it was a way for us moving forward. It's like, hey, I don't really GPS. I was like, oh, funny you say so. I happen to have this study here that we did the last 2 years. So that was a really great timing, and I really appreciate those guys helping out with that because they did an outstanding job with it.
Well, and Coach, I think it's an example too. You're a mid-major school, right? And maybe you don't have Trent Dilfer giving back, you don't have your coach giving back money to the program, but maybe that's a way to help. You get a system, and then you get some interns, right? You get some kids who are, maybe they're math majors or whatever. I mean, you're way smarter than me. I mean, and you get them involved to help you sort it all out.
Absolutely. 100%.
And so the last thing as we wrap up here, on data, you mentioned, like off the top. So your offense, you have this record-setting offense. How did the data first of all, how much lead time do you get when you have to script you're part of the script of the practice? I mean, are you finding out, is coach telling you like the day before, and then you're on the hook to get it, on Tuesday night, he comes to you and says, okay, this is what we're doing tomorrow. And then you got to have it ready like Wednesday morning. How does that work?
So that's the trick is just like you would a strength coach. You write out this year plan, it looks great, but guess what? Every week it's going to change, because there's something going on that's outside of your control or something happened. Everybody has a game plan to get until they get hit in the mouth, right? And so when a game happens, a lot changes that. So Coach Dilfer does an unbelievable job of laying everything out in advance. So I have months and months to prepare, and we're all on the same page with the coordinators and coach. And it looks great. And all of a sudden we get in week 3, we're like, man, that game went into, triple overtime, or we were expecting to get 86 snaps and we got 50, or we were expecting to get 85 and we got 140. So And then an injury happens and an injury happens and, 2 or 3 guys are getting more reps than we have. So many factors that you have no idea can happen. You have a great idea, you have a great game plan, but you better be able to deviate in and out of that game plan. And so I like to say we do it weeks and months ahead, and we do, but I would tell you this, it changes all the time and it changes daily based on how the guys feel, where their performance is. And a lot of that data that we're getting back, that goes into where we'll go for that day.
And and that makes complete sense. And now I'm wondering, so let's talk about the data and what it did for you before we get to more, because this will lead us into insights. So what did the data, how did it help you just create this offense that's racking up 450 yards per game?
Well, so, what we looked at and we wanted, number one, the data to help with us to go back and look at how can we get the most time to recover from Saturday to when we really have to hit it again. So let's looking at this data and looking at where we were. First of all, we were getting these things back every Saturday and looking at the data post game, and then on Sunday, okay, we're steadily getting faster. We're playing fast. We're getting more high speed numbers. We're getting, it's showing up on film, right? And so let's keep this thing climbing. And so we started getting away as the season went on, looking at the data from a traditional to a non-traditional, kind of model. So instead of the traditional off Sunday, do something on Monday, load it up on Tuesday, ramp it up Wednesday. Let's peak on Wednesday. Let's ramp it back down on Thursday. We're totally off on Friday, and then we're 100% on Saturday. We were looking at the data, and we were saying we need a little bit of almost micro dose stimulus. And this was Coach Dilfer. He came up with this kind of an NFL model that some teams were using. So then we would turn around and let's go Sunday and have a really micro dose day on Sunday at about 20% of what our load normally is. And let's turn around on Monday and give them completely off. Tuesday, let's start to pick it up. Let's peak on Wednesday. So now you turned around, they really had almost 72 hours of recovery before we had to hit it strong again. And so we dosed it pretty high on Wednesday. I think the highest we got there on Wednesdays were like 83%. And then we climbed down on Thursday to 66. Now, where we were different is on Friday, we had a day where we got out there and worked at about 35%. We cut back on the contacts, but we had a lot of high-speed exposures on Friday. We played the game really fast. And on Saturday, we had 100%. And we were able to add 2 speed training days one on, I believe it was Tuesday, and the other one on Thursday. On Tuesday, we did acceleration work, and we did the acceleration work based off of what we were missing during the week on high speed exposures, how many accelerations we did pre-practice. And so we built a speed training session in the pre-practice for about 25 minutes before we got it started. And we did the same thing on Thursday with max velocity, and that was kind of a fill the buckets day of 48 hours out. We did that pre-practice about 25 minutes. And what we saw was we were able to not only maintain our speeds and have zero soft tissue injuries, but we were able to actually increase the speed out of working in and out of an undulating model throughout the season. And, we felt really good, and we're going to stick with that model. But that's where the data, we knew what we wanted to do. We didn't know how much or what the intensities were until we would go in and look, and we would pull in and out of reps and percentages and intensities.
And so, the insights that you get, then it obviously matched up with the type of offense you wanted to run, because I've heard you talk in multiple arenas, and you're always talking about speed. And so I imagine that everything kind of came together then. The data led to the insights, and you're like, okay, this is going to be a perfect match for our offense.
Yes, we did. We had to marry it together. Our offensive coordinator was sold on it. He came from Alabama, where they had run a somewhat similar model. The thing that we needed more of is we were getting, of course, these high speeds. We needed repeatability, right? How many times could we repeat this? And that came through, depth, of course, depth helping us and rotating guys in and knowing what guys and fresh and weren't, and who is more available week to week and day to day. And who, that the data helped a lot in that. And it got guys more reps that normally weren't getting reps, and some guys that needed recovery that were war daddies that we would pull them off. So the rep sharing, being able to, rotate guys in and out using the data and seeing where they were. And then like being able to train and practice and come out and peak at the right time on Saturday to be able to run the type of offense that we were wanting to run. And when that thing was rolling and it was cooking, man, it's a force. It's almost suffocating. And you see a lot of teams, that's what they're trying to get away with, especially on our level we maybe don't have as much talent and we're just trying to out scheme you, right?
When you got to coach them. That's what you do, coach. That's what you do. You coach them up, baby. You're doing it, man. I love it. Dude, hey. No, man. Hey, but the other thing you keep bringing up, it's a consistent theme, in our discussion here is, the injury prevention and the player availability. I know you're big on that. I mean, you've touched on it a little bit here, as we were talking about the offense, but the insights that I mean, what can you, and you don't have to name names. I mean, I don't want you giving away any secrets or anything, but like what is it that you look at and you're like, this, our guys are on the field more. Our guys are available more now. And because in football, this is a big thing. You got to have your guys available. And when you're running into each other, all the time there, it's easy for anybody to get hurt. So what is it, the data and the insights that you're getting, that point right to like, this is the reason our guys are available?
I think it's you have to set those parameters all the way through all the off season and leading into them. Okay, where are we going to be? What is our volume? So like, for example, leading into fall practice, day one, I need to be at 75% of where we're going to be in a week of our 90%. Week two. So my whole off season leading up until spring ball, I'm working these guys and I'm steady climbing them, but I know where I need them to be day one of fall camp. All right. So it's about at 75%. And for 75% of us, I've got to get my bigs within 2,000 yards or greater. I've got to get my mids in 3,000 yards or greater. I've got to get my skill in 4,000 yards or greater. And that's the total volume and load of what we do that day. And then individual positions have their own load score. So if I can steady on ramp them slowly as we go, then it's not such a shock day one, because it's amazing over the years of how many guys are lost those first 2 days of fall camp because it's such a shock to the system, right? And then when we're able to have a plan and move forward where we can control it a little bit through fall camp, we'll ramp it up week 2, week 3, we'll do an overload, and then we'll start a taper leading up to the first day of camp. So we have a really good picture of where these guys want to be. And then it's just keeping them, no matter what, inside those windows. Where are we at volume wise? Where are we at load wise? For us, the load score tells us a lot because it's such an accumulation of everything. I like for our guys to know to know what's going on, but I don't want them to use it as a cop out, right? So if a guy, and the thing that always gets you, and here's the thing that we found, is when another guy, even a quality backup, goes down with an injury. And so that forces everybody else to take more reps, and there's nothing you can do about it. You've got to be able to run the practice. You've got to, you've got to be able to, get your game plan to start for the game. And those backups that are taking reps away, but still letting the other position players get their reps. Let's say a tight end, for example. Tight end goes down, and we've got guys that run multiple tight end sets now that these guys are not getting that break and rotating in. So if we spike up big on a Wednesday, then I've got to go to the player and say, hey man, you're about to red line. And then what are they? Oh man, what are they going to do? They're going to pull off. We still got to have them practice hard and still got to have them push so the timing of the offense is right. You know what I mean? If you can't run halfway reps in practice and expect to execute in the game. So what we do is we go to the position coach and like, hey, this is what's going on. We almost redlined today because, our game plan deviated from our game plan because, our backup tight end went down when he rolled his ankle, period 2. And so the coach goes in, okay, and we kind of sneak those guys in, and we might change the game plan for a day or two to let that player recover enough and still practice. The worst thing you can do that I see a lot of people do is just, we're going to pull a guy because he doesn't feel good. Well, then you're going to throw him back in and he doesn't have the exposures and he's not acclimated to what's going to happen. And that's when the real injuries occur. So it's a steady game of give and take. And it's a steady game of being able to ride those waves of where the data takes you and what's going to happen in everyday practice in the life that you didn't account for. And we feel like that's why we've been able to have guys finish through the season, is because we don't really deviate from those zones and those ranges. And if something happens outside of our control that we can't control, we still try to stay inside those. And whether it's changing the coach's plan and not letting a player think that, you can't push through this, because I want them to have that mentality, but we've also got to lead them in the right direction to where that doesn't put them in that position.
But it's just so, you paint the picture of how, the data provides the insights and then, it all works together. Then, your actions are based on, the insights and the data. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, I saw this video where, and I'm guessing it's at a practice. I saw it on your Instagram, and it's the beginning progressions of game speed. And it's fascinating, folks. If you go watch it, it's almost like watching a synchronized swimming on a football field or something. It's really, really neat. Can you explain to me like what the players are doing and why you are doing this, the beginning progressions of game speed?
Yes. So I tell you, there's a guy out there, I'm sure you know him, everybody knows him, named Tony Villani, and he gets a lot of credit for being and he should, for being one of the best acceleration 40-yard combine guys out there. But what a lot of people don't realize about Tony, and they're starting to realize, is he's probably the best change of direction guy out there in teaching change of direction, in teaching what game speed is. And the theory of game speed, and Tony was like gracious enough to come up here one day and work for me and my staff. And we found what we do is we'll take guys like Tony, and when they have this, they give us this skill, we figure out how to drill it in a large setting. And so what game speed is learning how to slow down to become faster. Number one, to prevent injury. Number two, to be as efficient as you can in shorter spaces, right? So if a guy is how does a guy who's a 4'8" guy or 4'6" guy in the NFL or on our level and as a wide receiver skill guy consistently get open? He's consistently open all the time. It's because he's efficient in his route running and he plays at a slower speed so he can control himself. So in and out of his breaks, he spends less time so he can create more distance. So what we're teaching our guys is basically, we go through a progression. We go through some change of direction tempos. We teach the game speed, and then we marry these together at some point in what we call small-sided games. A lot of guys are doing this, and then we time these things. And when we go out in time, you go and see a guy who runs a 90-degree turn, or you do a 5-yard fly-in through a laser and have him change direction and come back. And it blows some of these guys' minds that are 4'4" guys, but the 4'8" guy got a faster time than change of direction. Well, they understand game speed. So it's something that we progress. We teach, we teach it in short spaces and long spaces. And then you have to have the contextual, the final stage of it is to have the contextual awareness of when to use it and how to use it. So it's another tool that we're giving these guys to put in their tool shed, and it's an unbelievable weapon. But it's how, especially for us, we're going to eventually go up against some of these teams like SEC teams or Big Ten teams, whoever, who have better athletes, and guys who are more raw ability can, once again, just like if we can outcoach somebody and try to out game plan somebody, can the athlete do that on an individual basis and use every tool they can to combat against somebody that's a better athlete? Think about it as jujitsu. Jujitsu was invented to let somebody with less body weight be able to defend themselves against a larger opponent by using leverage and technique. It's the same thing you would think about with game speed.
That is, like I said, that video, I was watching it over and over. It's just, it's something I had never really seen before. And I appreciate you, giving us the details, and explaining a little more what it's about. I think it's great. Hey, by the way, like the miles per hour, you don't have to name names. Do you have a record setter for your miles per hour? Who's the fastest?
We do, and I'll name him. We had a player at Starling Thomas, who is a starting corner as a rookie, as an undrafted free agent rookie for the Cardinals, who is a 4.3 guy all day at 10.3, 400 meters guy, but he ran 24 miles an hour. I think it was 24.17. And the play which he did it on, he looks like some guys don't look, he looks like he's, and I love the play because it's a guy, a running back is on 4th and 1 on the opponent's 20. He breaks loose on an 80-yard run, and Starlin walks him all the way down and actually gets to him right as he passes through the end zone. But he covers so much ground. But that says a lot about that kid. He would just what his ability to not give up and give everything he's got. That's who he is. And combined with somebody who is an unbelievable natural speed talent like Starling. So I think even just that one play and that metric just caught the eyes of so many NFL teams. And it told us a lot about who the kid really was. But he's our guy. 24 plus is a gold standard around here. I don't know many guys that'll touch it but what an unbelievable kid he is.
Well, what is it? You can't teach speed. You can't coach fast. What is it? It's you just get. You need to nickname him Speed Limit. Jiminy Christmas, 24. Hey, did you ever do it yourself? Did you ever check your own miles per hour?
I don't want to fall into a deep state of depression too early. So I know the last time I tried to compete against our kids on the jump pad, I knew it was over for me. So
it's kind of like that moment with your own kids, right? When you're out in the backyard shooting hoops, and that day that comes when they start smoking you one-on-one.
And my day, I've got a 14 and a 12-year-old, and it's already there.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's the turning point. I went through it. Trust me. Hey, you've been great. And as we wrap here, I'm just curious. We talked about so many great things that you've been able to accomplish, with data and collecting, and the analytics and all that. But I'm just wondering, is there anything that's still missing? Is there anything that, when you come in every day, you're like, boy, I wish, we got so many great things, but I wish we had that. If the answer is no, that's great. But I'm just curious, is there anything that's still missing?
I don't know. It's evolving so fast with Kali. Anytime, I promise you, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was talking about it to a couple of fellow coaches at a conference. Anytime that I think, man, I wish, they had something that did this, it seems like next week they come out with it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's every time I'm like, wow, it's evolving at a rapid pace. if I didn't like intentionally search it every day, then it would happen and I wouldn't even know it. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say from that standpoint. I will say this. I wish some of the data and analytics would become more commonplace in how we evaluate and test athletes, not only from the high school to college level, but from the college to the NFL level. Like some of these testing metrics for the NFL are outdated. I wish they would go more into the data. You almost need, you almost would. I know, and I love the combine. And listen, I was in the combine business for 14 years. That's where I cut my teeth. But, it's almost like you have enough actionable data from looking at what goes on the season to see what a player is right there. And maybe you test some different metrics when you go into the NFL, but especially from the high school standpoint. I wish at these camps that there was more data taken from, actionable stuff from the GPS and set up from a laser than what we collect right now. And then I do think the more teams that are being exposed in the high school level, kids are starting to get what fast really is. And some of these like unattainable, the worst thing is a kid that goes to a camp and somebody times them wrong and they think that's what they are. Like, hey, I'm a 4.3. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not yet. I'm not saying you can't be.
Right.
You're not this. But once you get labeled that, it's hard to convince somebody that they're not that, but here's what you could be. Right. You know what I mean? So if I just say one thing, I don't know if there's anything that there's out there that I don't know, because there's so much stuff that I didn't even know existed. But that is the one thing I would change, is how we are evaluating these kids and what the metrics are for what is good and what is average.
I'll tell you, it sounds like you need to find yourself a couple of more graduate students and do another study.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put any more on your plate. I know you're scripting, you got all kinds of things going on, but
those doctoral students that play linebacker, there's not many of those. So
well, I tried. Hey, Coach, if somebody hears this and maybe wants to reach out to you or something, can they reach out to you, whether it's social media or email or anything? How can they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. My X or Twitter, I'm old Twitter, but my X handle is, it's hard to forget. It's at strengthzilla.com. I'm on, on Instagram at Lyle_Henley. And then my email is athfact, which is short for Athlete Factory. That is ATHFACT at UAB.edu. Reach out anytime. Our doors are always open.
Oh man, Coach, this has been great. Is there anything else you want to before I let you go? Is there anything that I should have asked that I didn't ask, or is there anything else you just want to throw out there and to like a final message to coaches, who are maybe thinking about doing it, or maybe think they don't have the budget or anything?
Yeah, I would tell you this. I would say it opened my eyes so much when we did that study, because I was on the fence of whether we really needed it or not. I'd done it for so long without it, and I even had some the higher ups that didn't want us to do it. You know what I mean? But because they didn't see the value of it. If you truly think that it's something you can use in your program, do your business, do your due diligence, go through and try to quantify everything in your program and figure out, what you need and what you don't need. And what is it? You don't necessarily have to have this device because somebody else have it. What personally do you have to have it for? What do you need it for in your program? And if it's something that adds value, then sell it and show why it adds value, because if you think it adds value, you can show it can. It absolutely will. So, do your homework, learn how to sell it. You can be a constant salesman, and then believe in it and take it. And I promise you'll find somebody that will see your passion for it and for the value in it and help you along the way, because that's what happened with us.
Man, find yourself a couple of math majors too to help you sort it all out, and you're all set. I mean, I just think that makes total sense. I mean, the more coaches I talk to, I'm just like, well, yeah, you can marry the math department or the analytics department, and and the sports department in so many different ways. Coach, I thank you so much for man. This was great. I mean, this was a great conversation. I hope everybody else feels the same way about it. Coach Henley, thank you so much, man.
All right, thank you, David.
Hey, if you know a great coach out there like Coach Lyle Henley, bringing a program back from the dead and setting records in the process and getting guys to the NFL, hey, we want to hear about them. We may even ask them to be a future guest on the podcast. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram, easy for me to say, at KINEXON Sports, or look for us on LinkedIn at KINEXON Sports and Media. Remember, we want you to innovate the game by collecting that data, getting those insights, and turning those insights into action. We will see you next time.